Good evening, everyone, and welcome to County Council, February the 13th, 2024. Attendance has been taken. We're all here. Second thing on the agenda is the land acknowledgement, and we're going to have Councillor McAlpine do that for us, please.
As we gather, we acknowledge that we meet on the lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations, Six Nations, the Grand River, and the traditional territories of the Enderwan-Durong. We remind ourselves that the County of Brant is situated on lands that are full of rich Indigenous history and homes of many First Nations. Inuit, Métis, people today, we recognize the significance of their contributions to the past, present, future of this land. As a country, we have shared responsibility for stewardship of the land on which we live, work, and a commitment to truth, reconciliation, and calls to action. We commit to continued learning, reflecting on our past, and working in allyship.
Thank you, Councillor McAlpine. That takes us to number 3 on the agenda, please, which is the approval of the agenda, noting that there is an addendum. Councillor House?
Mr. Mayor, can I add something in other business later?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Noting that there is an addendum, and the addendum is 2 pieces for the delegations and 2 bylaws. With that being said, Councillor Oakley, you're going to...
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor House that the County Brant Council agenda and addendum for February 13th, 2024 be approved.
Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Does anyone see one now? If you don't see one now and one comes up, please make sure that I'm the first person to know about it. And it takes us to number 5 on the agenda, which is a delegation. And it's 5.1. It's Mr. Smith regarding 1760 Coburn Street East. If you want to come to the podium, please, Mr. Smith, and give us your full name and your address, and you have 10 minutes to present to us.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Saul. Sorry, I'm a resident of Brant County at 1756 Coburn Street East, which is directly across from where the application is being made. The application set up some red flags to me when I read that major zoning bylaw amendment to rezone severed parcel from agriculture, which our area is all agriculture, zone to special exemption for the establishment of associated uses such as bulk sales, a bulk sales establishment. I just can't understand how we could take agricultural land and put it into a different parcel where really this situation is not really an agriculture environment. It's as far from agriculture environment as there possibly can be. I'd just like to talk about this area with regards to the volume of traffic and the situation that's in this area. Let me start by going west to east. We have on the south side of Highway 2 a huge establishment, Wessex. It's a trucking liquidation waste facility that transports waste into their area, stores it there, and it's a very busy area and extremely dangerous with all that goes on with the trucks turning in there. Now, before they could put that in there, they had to put in a left turn lane. A left turn lane because the traffic is quite a volume there and it's picking up all the time. Left turn lane because some of these large trucks take a while to make that left-hand turn. And the situation too, there's a curve in the road there, so they can't exactly get across the road quickly. directly across from that, I just want to give an idea of this situation. Directly across from Wessex 2 is a small community center. It has 2 driveways, and it is used regularly by people having their birthdays there, or whatever, there might be a meeting. And so I'm just trying to develop the volume of traffic that is turning on and off of Highway 2 in that area. Just east of Wessex is a farm, which I don't know what is going on there. They have a lot of scrap metal storage units in there. There's excavators back in there, and they are moving in and out of that facility all the time. And it does impact, should I say, the situation with regards to the traffic. Just east of that particular farm is the Snoblin grain elevator. Now, this area is an extremely busy area. It has all sorts of, large transport trucks, double trailers coming in and out of there. There are tractors that take large grain wagons, sometimes 2 at a time, and they travel up the middle of the road with just flashers on. So it's an extremely dangerous area. Now, in that situation where the Snoblin dryer unit is, there is no turning lane. And that is impacting the safety of that area. Not only the safety of the people that go and work and call in those areas, but the safety of the residents. It has incorporated a lot of anxiety when a person turns into their property, going from whatever way, really. It's a contained area. And directly across from the Snoblin area is the Brant Mushroom Farm. Now, they have 2 driveways, and I see it all the time where 18-wheelers will pull up, go across the road, and back into that area. So that creates another situation, because those transport trucks are backing right across the road. And there's a little knoll there, and I'm telling you, if somebody comes over that, it's a very dangerous situation. Now, this proposed area that these people are talking about is really close to the White Swan Road. The White Swan Road is an extremely busy road, especially on the weekends when people are coming from wherever and going down there to head for their fix on cigarettes, heading for the reserves for their cigarettes and cheap gas. So me as a resident there, because my farm would be directly across from this proposed station, I guess if you would, proposes many hazardous problems, and it's really concerning me. And it's really one of the most important things. It's just taken away from the quality and the area that they would propose to put this in. Our community is farm rural, and we're doing our best to keep it that way. Not that we're opposed to situations, but I think in this area, it is packed. It is dangerous, and I don't think that we have any more room for any additional traffic turning in and out of this area. I've tried to explain myself the best I can. If there's anything that you have questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Is there anyone around the horseshoe that has anything to say to the delegation? Seeing none, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, and
Delegation.
thank you all.
Looking for direction as to what to do, either to receive or defer it to 9.2. Councillor Coleman.
Move to receive, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Seeking a seconder, Councillor Oakley. All those in favor? Received, thank you. Takes us to 5.2 on the agenda, which is Bob and Matthew from Cahoons. Or just one? All right. You have 10 minutes. Tell us your full name, please, and who you represent. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Bob Phillips from J.H. Cahoon Engineering Limited. Oh, thank you. Never had that happen before. I'm here representing Jacob Bix on his application on Colburn Street. It's 1760 Colburn Street. I'm pitch hitting for Rashika Anguish and Matt White. Rashika's online right now as well, but Matt's sick and was unable to attend. The proposal that's before you tonight in an application later on is for a bulk sales establishment as an agricultural related commercial use. The proposal is to create a waterman bulk station on this property, which is related to providing water to the agricultural community. That's a significant portion of his business. The Bix family bought the business back in 2018 and temporarily relocated to an industrial site on Papel Road, but due to conflicts with the operations there, that's why he's seeking to move it to this location. His clientele is located between Ancaster and Brantford, so this is a very good location for him. This application started in 2021 with meetings with county planning staff, followed up in 2022 with planning staff, and obviously through that time we've been through a number of planners. As part of the application, they were required to do significant studies, planning justification, archaeology, transportation impact, a site development plan, grading and servicing, geotechnical, stormwater management, hydrogeological assessment, and MDS calculations. At all times through this process, he was never there was no indication to Rashika or our staff that this was not going to be supported. I appreciate they didn't say they were going to support it, but there was no discouragement from continuing through the process. The owner spent in excess of $50,000 on these studies. All of the studies have been presented to the county, and we've had no comments on them. They've been, from a technical point of view, have been accepted. We're submitting that the bulk sales establishment is an agricultural related industry. And it's a commercial component, but permitted in the agricultural zoning. Not specifically, that's why we're here for an amendment. This application was sent to the Agricultural Advisory Committee. Rashika and Matt White from our office attended the meeting, were unable to speak. As part of that submission, a business plan indicating who the owner's clientele were in the area. Obviously, it's a confidential report given to the county to try to establish if it was an agricultural type use. As I understand that Rashika and Matt White from our office were unable to speak at the Agricultural Advisory Committee, and it came to their attention that maybe not all this information was before the Agricultural Advisory Committee. And as such, I would suggest that council should put little weight on the recommendation from the Agricultural Advisory Committee. This proposal is related to agricultural uses in the area. He operates with right now about 5 trucks. They leave the site in the morning and they come back at night. It's not a high traffic volume business, but I wanted to point out that there was a transportation impact study that was presented to the county, and to date there's been no technical concerns with that report or any of the others. So we're seeking tonight through the next application that's before you support from council for this change in use. I'm happy to answer any questions. As part of a request to council tonight, Rashika was the official applicant. Our firm's been working through her through the whole process. And although I'm not an agent, I'm sure the owner will allow me to speak on his behalf during that meeting. I hope council will too, if required. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to the presenter? Councillor Pierce, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Bob. You made a statement that the place that they're currently at, there was conflicts with the operation there, so the decision was made to move. Are you able to elaborate on that at all?
Maybe I could ask the owner who's here with me tonight. He can do it now or during the actual presentation of the report.
Okay. If he's going to be up through the report, Mr. Mayor, I can wait for that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be part of 9.2.
They have to ask.
Okay, you have to ask your questions now. Yeah. Yeah, you can Clark will clarify.
Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Pearson, just so that everybody understands, right now currently this is a council meeting, so we are not going to go into a public planning meeting. So when the staff report comes before us, as per any normal staff report, staff can present their report, but it would be out of order unless council were to deem otherwise that any other input be received. And so if council has any questions of the delegation, they can ask them now. So currently Bob Phillips, Matthew White are listed as the delegation. So if they have any questions of that, I believe we have one more delegation, Connor Wilkes. Is that who you're speaking about? Okay.
No.
So if anybody else, I can see that Rashika's online. She hasn't registered as a delegation. If anybody else would like to address council, council would have to set aside the rules and allow that to happen, as nobody else has registered as a delegation to speak.
Councillor Pierce, you have a question?
My question is if I can get a little elaboration on the statement made that there was conflicts with the operation at the other location and the decision was made to move.
Would you indulge me 2 minutes to speak to the owner and then I'll answer the question?
Yep, you can do that.
Could be nothing, but what I understand is he enforced the move or what? Right?
I think he's leasing it, and the lease is up.
Okay, so that's cool.
He should be able to tell you.
Yeah, that's cool.
Didn't even take you 2 minutes. You got money in the bank.
Thank you very much for that. I spoke with the owner. The property on Papel Road is owned by his family and operates as an industrial type use. They have other plans, and he's basically a squatter on their property for the time being, and he's looking to establish his own.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate the indulgence of committee.
Thank you. Councilor Miller, you're next, then Councilor McAlpine.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if I look at the property on Papel Road, like it looks like a large kind of concern, which is good. Don't get me wrong. Is that entire business to be transferred over, or just that water?
Just the water.
Okay. So there's components of that business that wouldn't be.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Councilor McAlpine.
I'm just wondering the rationale for the request to have a severance on the property. If it's agricultural use, they could operate it, I assume, already on the property as is. There would be steps, of course, to go through, but.
Yeah, there's a subsequent consent application, but that's from a business planning point of view. Owning a piece of property, building a building, securing financing, those types of things. And that all comes with ownership of a parcel of land rather than just part of a farm.
So you'd be separating the business then from the farm, rather than operating it as a jet business to the farm.
That's correct.
Any other questions to the presenter? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm looking for a motion either just to receive or to defer it to 9.2. Councillor Pierce? Councillor Oakley seconding that. All those in favor? Thank you. Takes to 5.3. Connor, he's on the line. Wilkes. Connor?
Good evening, Council. I have registered as a delegate to answer any questions after Emily's presentation to Council. I have nothing further to add and support her recommendation for approval.
It is for, the recommendation is for refusal. Is that right? No. Approval. Oh, I'm sorry, you're here representing 779 Powerline Road?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, sorry. Okay, any questions? Councillor Miller?
Yeah, okay. Switching gears a little bit. Okay, so to the delegation, the question is, there will be storage of wet material on site. Wet material can cause odors. If there's an odor problem, would a resident call their local councillor, or would they call the Ministry of the Environment for that?
Through you, Chair. We do have two individuals who are present at Council. I don't believe they've registered as delegates, but they are from Waste Management, or Waste Connections Canada, sorry, and they would handle the day-to-day questions of the operation. We've also noted that these types of mitigation measures could be implemented and mitigated through site plan control.
Councillor Miller?
Maybe staff could help me out with this one, because when I read the report, it says that odors are controlled through the Ministry of the Environment, or whatever they call themselves now. And as the delegate has said, there's a site plan control, which I know. The county's responsible for site plan control. So I'm just, in the unlikely event that there may be odor issues down the road, how would they be dealt with? What would be the proper channels to go through? Do you go by the site plan control, or do you go, as the report stated, the odors are to be controlled by the ministry?
Through you, Chair. So odor concerns would be received at the facility and the ministry if possible.
Okay, it's a nice, clear answer. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions to the presenter? Seeing none, looking for direction for the delegation to receive or defer. Council, just to receive? Looking for a second or just to receive the delegation? Councillor Coleman. Any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Which takes us to number 6 on the agenda, which is business arising from the minutes. Moving right along. 7.1 on the agenda is consent items to be approved. There aren't any. 7.2 consent items to be received. There aren't any. Committee reports, there are none, which takes us to number 9, which is the staff reports, 9.1. And who's going to speak to that, Emily?
Good evening, Mayor Bailey and members of council. I am presenting zoning bylaw amendment application for 779 Powerline Road from Dillon Consulting on behalf of Waste Connections Canada Incorporated. Staff are recommending approval of this application. So subject lands are located north of Powerline Road, west of Oak Park Road and Sharp Road, and north of Highway 403. The property is currently within a heavy industrial area. The lands are currently owned and operated by Waste Connections of Canada, who operate the facility as a waste recycling collection vehicle and bin rental facility. No waste is currently accepted or transferred on site. The subject lands are designated as employment within the County of Brant official plan and zoned as heavy industrial M3 within the zoning bylaw. The application is looking to rezone the lands from heavy industrial to a site-specific energy and waste industrial to expand operations and permit a waste transfer station. The zoning bylaw amendment also includes a request for reduced street setback, interior side yard setback, and landscape open space requirements. To date, no comments have been received as part of the public circulation. Staff have prepared an independent professional planning opinion on the application and are recommending approval to council, as the proposal does constitute good planning. The reasons for recommending approval are outlined in the report on page 14. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions to the presentation? Approval. Councillor Bell, you're first, and Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to our presenter. Whenever I see an application that says they would like setbacks, it kind of makes me worry because I don't know what they want to do with reduced setbacks. Well, what will be the impact of a reduced interior side yard setback?
I'm sorry, through the chair, I'm just having a hard time hearing you. Are you inquiring about what is the impact?
What will be the impact of allowing for a reduced interior yard setback?
So through the mayor, the reduction for an interior side yard setback, as the applicant has outlined, would allow for more efficient design and ability to construct on the site, including additional traffic management from that perspective, given that vehicles will be entering and exiting throughout the site. In terms of neighbors, I mean, of course, the development would be closer to surrounding properties. Staff have done a review in terms of looking at sensitive land uses. We have identified a single dwelling that's on the outskirts of the search radius or setback requirement for the employment area or for this specific property and the proposed use. It is legal non-conforming. The rest of the area, in terms of uses existing surrounding the property to date, are general employment uses. And so in terms of from a compatibility perspective, it is of staff's opinion that the proposal at hand would be compatible with those in the surrounding area and adjacent to the property.
So if I may, if the person that's owning the land immediately next to this property changes, if that land changes hands and a new owner comes along, can he object to the change to the setback? Can he say, why have you moved away from your county rule set?
Through the chair, you're just looking for clarification you're asking if a new owner moved in next door and is objecting the approved setback at that point?
Yeah.
Through the chair, Well, at that point, if a setback was approved, I mean, there would be no opportunity to object that. The applicants would have, or the property owners at 779 would have the ability to build up to that setback as permitted.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the planner, just that they have to complete an ECA, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Does that stand on its own, or does that become part of the site plan, that ECA?
Through the chair, I believe it's separate from the site plan process, but it would be a requirement for the operations to occur on site.
But at the end, if they're separate, but at some point they have to mesh, correct? Like you can't have one conflicting with the other.
So, sure, that is correct. We can require it at a site plan. That was a requirement or a comment to be made by engineers. I unfortunately don't have that expertise to speak to that requirement. Should we receive a site plan control application for this, it would be up to our development engineering department to call for that requirement.
Okay. Yeah, because we don't have any input anymore on site plan control. So it's okay. Anyways, last question. What I asked the proponent of it, if there is an odor issue down the road, if it ever happened, the MEC, the Ministry of the Environment would be the ones to deal with that?
Through the
Not
chair.
the county?
Through the chair. I believe there are several avenues that could occur through that. So one is the Ministry of Environment. I mean, they do have a role in terms of regulating the use and the operations on site. Two, I mean, there is the ability to contact the individual building or the owners, operators. And three, complaints could be made to bylaw should there be a concern, and we could investigate and address it from there. It is my understanding, just to clarify, as what was identified by the applicant's engineer at the public information meeting last month, that the waste transfer is to be contained within an entire building, and from that perspective, in terms of environmental compliance, they would have to meet certain standards in terms of noise, odor, etc.
Okay. It's not an academic question. I mean, we've dealt with odors many times at the county, and it's always it's a very messy situation to deal with. So, and okay, I appreciate the answers.
Yeah, I've just been reminded too by staff that we do have a nuisance bylaw that we could go through too before we bothered the ministry. So there are pieces that the county has worked into their bylaws for stuff like that. Any other questions for the presenter? I need a motion to get it on the floor, please. Councillor Pierce, looking for a seconder before we call the vote. Seconder, we haven't got a mover to get it on the floor to talk about it. Councillor McAlpine, Councillor Pierce, am I confused? Are you confused?
Well, I don't, can we ask questions to the delegate, not through our own staff, but a question to the proponent?
Yep.
Okay, because you had said we're going to vote.
We don't have it on the floor yet, so I just wanted to get it on the floor so that when it's time to vote, we can. So you've got it, and Councillor McAlpine has it, and now you're going to speak to it.
I don't think it's a question that staff can answer. It was a question that I asked last time this was here, that they were supposed to, through you, Mr. Mayor, they were supposed to understand. The question I asked was how much of the waste from there will be going to Biggers Lane?
That's right.
And there wasn't an answer for it when they were in the first time, and I'm looking for an answer for it this time, along with the same question I asked in the fact of, if in fact there's hazardous waste going to be allowed to be put there, if so, what? Paints, tires, propane tanks, etc.
Yeah, I remember you asking the question. I remember you asking for something to be brought back. Does anyone have anything?
Through the mayor, just to clarify Councillor Pierce's question, it's the type of waste that's to be received on site?
No, and again, Mr. Mayor, I don't think this is a question that our staff can answer. This is a question that the proponent's going to have to answer. In the fact, my first question when he was here last time, I asked him how much of the waste is going to be diverted to Biggers Lane. He suggested that they have their own waste, I believe it was down, I think he said Chatham Way, I believe.
Yes.
But I don't know if all of it's gonna be shipped that way, because if some of it is gonna be shipped to Beggars Lane, again, we're just expanding that, that's gonna reduce the life of that. He couldn't answer the question. And then I asked a question about the hazardous waste. You know, are they gonna be accepting hazardous waste? If so, what? How's it gonna be stored? I didn't get an answer.
So through the mayor, I can perhaps clarify based on the information that was provided to us, and I do recall what was mentioned at the public information meeting. It's my understanding that Waste Connections Canada has several of its own private landfills across the province, so that they would be taking some of those, or the waste, and transferring it to their private locations.
Right.
As well, in terms of the type of waste, hazardous waste, it's our understanding that it is municipal, institutional, commercial, and industrial waste that's going to be received on site. I haven't received much more detail beyond that.
Okay, I've got a tough time voting on this one way or another, Mr. Mayor, if I don't have that information, because, and I appreciate the fact, the amount of information our staff has, but to me, this shouldn't be up to our staff to answer those questions. This should be something that the proponent who is looking for this expansion should be able to answer, and hasn't to this point.
No, you're absolutely right, and I do remember you asking for it, more information be brought forward. We can defer it, we can table it, we can do all kinds of other things. We don't have to vote on it.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I would like to clarify before I'm in the, you know, I would support this, but if all of a sudden I find out that, you know, 25% of their waste is going to be diverted to beggars, I'm not okay with that.
Absolutely. Is there any other comments about the same thing as Councillor Pierce is concerned about? I'm concerned about it too. I don't know whether we should ask to have more information on it. I do remember them saying that they did own their own sites and all of that, but they didn't have exact numbers. And you know, if something else happens than what we're expecting, you're right. It's not going to be a very good surprise for the county. That's for sure.
Right, and if I could, Mr. Mayor, I believe the statement as our staff was that some of the waste would be to their own private ones. That's great. But I just want to understand how much, because I would like to see all of it going there. As much as, you know, don't get me wrong, it would be a, you know, it would be revenue for the county if they did take it to Biggers. But I have an assumption that the amount of waste that's going to be going through this place would severely impact the lifespan of Biggers Lane. So,
does council have any other comments or concerns? Councillor Garneau?
May I ask a procedural question of the clerk, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Earlier, the clerk spoke about the council could grant leave. I hear Councillor Pierce's question, and if there's someone present tonight, either online or in the room, who could answer that, I'd hate to see us kick that forward if there was a way that the procedure would allow us to get that answer.
Yeah,
I'm mindful that we'd be another month if we deferred.
I'm going to ask the clerk to clarify, because we do have someone in the room that could speak to it. So
through your worship to Councillor Garneau's question, so yes, so council can set aside the rules set out throughout the setting of the agenda. So by simple majority, if there is somebody who has an answer, then if council so wishes, they could come forward and answer questions.
Okay. So with that being said, there is someone in the room that can speak to it for clarification. What's council's desired? What do you want us to do? Do you want to let them speak? Councillor Garneau? Seconded by Councillor Coleman. All those in favor to let someone speak? Absolutely. If you want to come to the podium, please state your name and how you're involved in this this issue.
Good evening. My name is Julie Wilson. I'm the district manager of Waste Connections. And go ahead, Laura.
I'm Laurel, and I'm a region engineer with Waste Connections.
So to answer your question, 100% of the waste will be going to our own privately owned landfill in Chatham. 0 will be going to the city or to Biggers Lane. Our transfer will only be accepting solid, non-hazardous waste, so we will not be accepting anything that's hazardous.
through you, Mr. Mayor, I thank you very much for those answers.
Can we answer the earlier question as well?
Yes, please.
Your question about odor. So when we go to obtain an environmental compliance approval for this facility, we will need to outline an entire design and operations plan for the facility, and it will deal with any sort of nuisance that could arise, and we will have to have a plan on how to address those nuisance issues. So before we get to operating the station, we will need to have a detailed plan of what we'll need to do. I do want to add, we have a number of these facilities that operate across Ontario, and we typically don't have concerns from how we operate them. We employ appropriate technologies to ensure that the odors don't become a nuisance for our neighbors.
Any other questions or clarification to be? No. Well, thank you for offering to come to the podium, and thank you, Councillor, for letting them speak, because it did save us a lot of time. It would have just been pushing things off to another meeting, and I'm not sure that would have been necessary. Any other questions? We have a motion on the floor to approve. It's got as a seconder. No other comments? All those in favor? Opposed and carried. Thank you. Which takes us to 9.2 on the agenda, which is back to 1760 Coburn Street. Can I get a motion to put it on the floor, please? Mover. Councillor Howes, seconded by Councillor Oakley. And
Okay, good evening, Council. I am presenting zoning bylaw amendment application for 1760 Colborne Street East from the Angus Group on behalf of Bix Farms Incorporated. This application is required to permit a bulk water depot and create smaller than permitted lots in the agricultural area with reduced front yard setback. Staff are recommending refusal of this application. The subject lands are located southeast of Colborne Street East, west of White Swan Road, and south of Highway 403. The subject lands are currently vacant of development and are actively being farmed. The surrounding area consists of agricultural land uses. The subject lands are designated as agricultural and natural heritage within the County Brand Official Plan and zoned as agricultural and natural heritage within the county zoning bylaw. So the application in front of you has three requests. First is to create a bulk water depot in the agricultural area. Two is to create a smaller than permitted lot in the agricultural area where the bulk water depot will be located with reduced front yard setback. And three, to permit a smaller than permitted lot in the agricultural areas on the lands proposed to be retained. Staff are recommending refusal for the following reasons. One, the proposed bulk water depot is not a permitted use in the agricultural area under the provincial policy statement, OMAFRA guidelines, and under county policy, as the use is, in the opinion of staff, a general commercial use and does not primarily serve farmers. Two, the application looks to create smaller than what is permitted lots in the agricultural area, which is not permitted under provincial policy, OMAFRA guidelines, and under county policy. Three, lastly, the proposal does not seek to keep this use secondary to the farm operation on site as required by the zoning bylaw, and seeks to introduce incompatible development within the existing agricultural area. To date, several public comments with the proposal have been received, including questions regarding whether the use is indeed agriculture related, whether the use would be more appropriately located in the settlement area, and concerns regarding traffic congestion and public safety on Colborne Street East. The application was also brought to Agricultural Advisory Committee, who voiced concerns over the proposal. Specific details on the Agricultural Advisory Committee's motion are on page 15 of the report. Staff have prepared an independent professional planning opinion on the application and are recommending refusal to council, as the proposal does not constitute good planning. The reasons for recommending refusal are outlined in the report on page 17. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
are there any questions? Councillor Coleman, you're first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the planner. When this proposed application was brought forward back in 2001, and the policies that remain then would be there now if they were back then. Would this application be had the nod of approval by staff? My drift?
through through the mayor, this application came in for a pre-consultation in March of 2021. At that point in time, our zoning bylaw did permit bulk sales establishments broadly, whether or not they served agriculture or not, and that was the application that staff provided comment on. Given changes to provincial policy and OMAFRA guidelines over the course of time, as we've seen, staff have undertaken several housekeeping amendments to align our zoning to be more in line with provincial policy, to state that bulk sales establishments have to be agriculture related and must meet several criteria, including primarily serving farmers, etc., in order to be viewed as a bulk sales establishment and permitted within the agricultural area. Given that policies have changed, I can't speak to on behalf of the planner that looked at the application at that time, back in 2021, given that policies have changed, when we received this initial application on July 11th of 2023, I provided comments back as the planner signed on file to the applicant, advising them of this change, saying policies have changed, this is how we're going to be viewing the proposal. There will be challenges in meeting this, and we are requiring additional information to see whether or not the argument to have it be permitted as an agriculture-related use stands. We've been back and forth with the applicant since that time, being very clear about staff's position on this proposal and the challenges and the tests that would have to be met under provincial policy and county policy. And our proposal and our recommendation today is a result of these changes and the information that has come to light.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Coleman?
Not really, but I may have another one later.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Kyle, you're next.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you to Emily. Emily, I'm just wondering, so a business needs to primarily serve farming operations. What's the threshold? What's the criteria for that threshold that would indicate that a business is primarily serving farms?
So through the mayor, that is an excellent question. So OMAFRA guidelines are a document that outlines several criteria and scenarios in which municipal staff can look for clarifications on that. One example that we asked for was a client list, and this was confidential, and we did keep this confidential. We did not receive an exhaustive client list, but rather received about approximately 20 names of clients that were identified to be farmers. We did not see an exhaustive client list as to relative to who else is being served. As part of this, staff were able to verify the addresses using public data as to whether or not some of these application or addresses are registered farm businesses within the county. We were all, out of that list of 20, we were only able to verify a handful. And so it is of the opinion of staff that if there's any doubt as to whether or not it primarily serves the agricultural industry, we can't be sure that it's an agriculture related use. It's also been informed to us that there is a broader clientele in terms of serving and filling pools, cisterns, etc., broader, more residential uses. And so just based on the information that was provided to us, it is of the opinion of staff that it does not primarily serve farmers.
Follow-up, Councillor Kyle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just wondering, there are many rural properties that perhaps have horses or other small livestock that wouldn't necessarily qualify as a registered farm business, but would be requiring the services. So therefore, they're agricultural and rural. So I'm just wondering if those got dismissed as clients that would fall under that umbrella as needing that service in the countryside, or whether it was only the registered farm business, which means that they're making their more than $5,000 a year on their farm income.
So through the mayor to Councillor Kyle, great question. Provincial policy is very clear that it is supposed to serve the agricultural industry as a broad, and based on how we define farming operations at the county level from a zoning bylaw perspective, that is based on an FBR. And so we are using FBR information to verify whether or not farming operations in the county are benefiting from this use.
Thank you. Councillor Garneau, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the planner, a couple of questions, if I may. Wondering if we have other examples of bulk sales in agricultural areas already approved in the county whether there are any precedents, but also from a planning policy statement. I think I heard that the rules changed during the time in which this application was before the county. And how is that normally treated as a planning practice when perhaps the goalposts of the rules change midship?
So through the mayor to Councillor Garneau, in terms of specific established agriculture-related bulk sales establishments in the county, I don't have any that come to mind. Specific examples provided under provincial policy include a farm implement dealership, for instance, a seed supplier or farm input supplier, those uses that are very clearly exclusively serving agriculture. And with respect to the second question, we process applications as they come in and as they are deemed complete based on the policies that are in place at the time. And this is made clear to all applicants who come in for a pre-consultation meeting with the county. It is unfortunate in the case that several years had lapsed since the pre-consultation meeting happened and policies had changed, the applicants had come in, and we advised them at the time of receiving that application that policies have changed and we have to assess it under what is in the zoning bylaw at this time because that is the date that we received the formal application.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Garneau? No? Councillor Chambers? Oh, Councillor Coleman first? I'm sorry, then Councillor Chambers.
That's right, Mr. Mayor. So going back to what Councillor Kyle said about ag-related and with agriculture. So if you're an employee on a farm and you don't have any water, is that not ag-related? And so that's one point. My second point is, I know we're not supposed to debate this right now, but you talked about when the pre-consultation was and when the applicant come back. But the applicant was asked to go back, and I'm going this by the delegation of Mr. Phillips, was that he had to do all these studies. Studies don't happen overnight. It takes a long time to make these studies be completed. So is there leeway for this or not? Because I think by the amount of studies that I heard, I don't think you can get that done in a few months. Especially an archaeological study.
So through the mayor, are you able to clarify your question to me, please?
Go back to the question. After Councillor Kyle said about ag-related, if you are an employee on a farm and you don't have water, is that not, you need the water? Is that not ag-related? I have a son that lives on a county road that has shortage of water all the time, and he farms with me. So is that not ag-related?
So through the chair, in terms of what is considered to be agriculture related under provincial policy, which is the definition that we are assessing this proposal on, I'm happy to bring that up to share with council at this time to clarify. But the idea behind agriculture related uses is that they serve the farming industry primarily and the greater agricultural system or supply chain as a whole. The argument of staff is that everybody needs water. And so, yes, while the agricultural industry does need water, so do very many other uses and individuals and stakeholders all throughout the county of Brant. And so it is of my opinion as staff, that this does not truly constitute an agriculture-related use, especially when assessed against the criteria that were outlined in the report.
Councillor Coleman, follow-up question, and then Councillor Chambers.
I'm kind of an argumentative mood today. So going back to what you mentioned earlier about feed dealers and implement dealers. So somebody that goes into a local little feed dealer here that's in Burford and buys bird seed, is that ag related? Or the county of Brant stops at Brant Tractor on Bishopgate Road in the corner of Bishopgate and 53 and buys parts for their chainsaws. Is that ag-related? Ag-related is a very hard thing to define. That's my point.
Are you looking for a response or was it just a statement? Thank you. Councilor Chambers?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to the planner. One thing that hasn't changed over the years is that the municipality must be consistent with provincial policy documents. No question about that. Am I correct on that? That's the wording. We must be consistent with provincial policy documents.
Through the mayor, yes, that's correct.
One of the provincial policy documents, and actually it would be nice if everybody could get a copy of this. I do have a copy of it, and I've looked at it extensively, and that's the Guidelines on Permitted Uses in Ontario's Prime Agricultural Areas 2016. You relied heavily on that document for your reasoning in the recommendation for refusal. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And in that policy statement, must be consistent with, which has been around since 2016. One of the things that is stated in there, and we haven't actually mentioned that, and I want you to elaborate on this. Agricultural uses are permitted uses in agricultural areas must be primarily benefit. So if it's not primarily beneficial, then it doesn't qualify. And also, it has to be, and this is an important thing that you haven't even mentioned yet, I want you to elaborate on this, it has to be in proximity with permitted uses. In other words, if you locate a use in an agricultural area, you can do that if it supports the immediate area. If you're supplying things in Kingston, that does not qualify. Or if you're just, and so it has to be within the immediate area. Could you just elaborate on permitted, proximity, and in the immediate area as it relates to the provincial policy statement of 2016?
So through the mayor, in prime agricultural areas, which all agricultural lands in the county are part of, permitted uses include agricultural uses, agriculture-related, and non-farm diversified uses. So as Councillor Chambers alluded to, those uses, especially the agriculture-related, must, under provincial guidance, primarily benefit farmers and the surrounding agricultural area. And you are correct that the farmers or agricultural industry within the immediate area is what needs to be assessed as being served and benefited to permit these uses. And this criteria exists because it's opening up agricultural lands for development. And so the development that is to be permitted under provincial policy statement has to consider and balance the agricultural land protection as well as benefits to serving the economic aspect of the agricultural industry, which is why these uses are permitted. And we don't see general commercial uses or other types of uses permitted on prime agricultural areas within the county. So it is pertinent that agricultural uses, agriculture-related uses that are permitted, serve the farming operation primarily or farming operations primarily, and there is a clear benefit to farming operations within the surrounding area.
Councillor Chambers, follow up?
I don't want to monopolize, so I'll let the others.
It's okay. Are there any other questions for the presenter, speaker, staff? Councillor Chambers, we're back to you again.
And just to maybe continue on that, the criteria, it serves the farming area in the immediate area. That doesn't impact a use if it is in a recognized zone for that use. It is just in this case, it is being looked at for zoning change in what is a prime agricultural area. Can you elaborate on that?
Through the mayor, are you able to clarify your question?
Maybe. What we're looking at here is a use that serves the agricultural community, and the request is that it be placed in an agricultural zoned parcel. And there's nothing to say that that use cannot be carried out in a area that is zoned specifically for those uses. So the difference in this case is that it is wanting to be put in an agricultural area. And that is where the guidelines of 2016 come into play as a provincial policy document. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
So through the mayor, yes, the reason why this is coming up is because it's being located within the prime agricultural area. And so I think maybe just to provide some clarification, I will go over the definition of an agriculture related use and the criteria that we look at as staff in order to assess whether or not that is actually appropriate to be located within the prime agricultural area. So under provincial policy, agriculture related uses mean those farm related commercial uses and farm related industrial uses that are directly related to farm operations in the area, support agriculture, and benefit from being in close proximity to farm operations and provide direct products or services to farm operations as a primary activity. And so as part of those criteria, we are looking at whether or not the agriculture related use is indeed a farm related commercial or industrial use. 2, is it compatible with or does it hinder surrounding agricultural operations? 3, is it directly related to farm operations in the area? 4, does it directly support agriculture? And 5, does it provide direct products and services to farm operations as a primary activity? Lastly, number 6, and it benefits from being in close proximity to farm operations.
Councillor Chambers, you're okay with that? Any other questions for staff? This has been a very difficult thing to come up, but I've never seen so many people change their mind or listen to both sides of the coin at the same time. I see so many ways of going here, and I sat in the Agriculture Advisory Committee too, as did Councillor Coleman, and they refused it, and I voted with them. But I don't believe they had all the information that they needed at committee level. I can't speak for them, but I know that I was at that meeting and they didn't know as much as we know tonight about what's going on. So not that they would have maybe changed their mind, but they could have changed their mind and maybe supported this had they known everything or more than they knew at that meeting. So with that being said, if there's no more comments or concerns, the recommendation is on the floor. It's been seconded that the staff recommendation in front of us is to refuse. Is that right? To refuse the water on this piece of property. Are you sure there's no more discussion? Yeah, Councillor Coleman or Councillor McAlpine's first, since you haven't spoke yet.
So as part of the issue that because we're creating a new lot, that the business wouldn't be secondary to the agricultural use of that property? Because that's something that jumps out at me is the whole concept of creating a new lot in the countryside.
So through the chair to Councillor McAlpine, that is part of staff's reason for refusal. So there are several components, is whether or not the use is indeed agriculture related, which we've spoken about. Number 2 is the rezoning at hand looks to essentially facilitate a severance in the agricultural area, and to create an undersized lot and further fragment the land base, which I'm sure council is aware is also not supported under provincial policy. 3rd is under county zoning, we require the farm operation, the lands being farmed to be located on site with the agriculture related use. And in this case, the rezoning and the subsequent application for consent that would come after this, should this be approved, would look to essentially sever that use from the farmlands, which is unfortunately under this proposal in front of us. Staff are unable to recommend approval based on that premise for those reasons.
Okay. Yeah. Before we go any further, could I just make sure the clerk, if you could, make sure that we all get in our Friday files a copy of what Councillor Chambers wants us to have with the provincial policy in our Friday file, so that we all have what he has in front of him, which makes him look so much more clever than we do. And that's not fair. I'm going to go to Councillor Garneau next, and then back to Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I saved my debate thinking we were going to get there after questions. I'll start by saying it's always difficult as a ward councillor when you have residents from your area on different sides of the coin, especially when you know both of them prior to arriving at the meeting. But unfortunately, our job as councillors sometimes is to make a decision, and that means that we have to take sides. I can't support the staff resolution tonight as written. And I want to speak to my own experience not far away from this site at our farm. I'm a new farmer. I just figured out last Friday I had to get a farm business number, and the more established folks are probably going to laugh at me for this, but the reality is we may not have checked all the paperwork boxes with places, but we've been very much farming and entirely reliant on trucked in water since we arrived in August 2020. So our farm has no functioning wells at this time. It's got one that's got a 2 gallon a minute refresh rate, but if you've ever tried to water a greenhouse at that rate, let alone have a shower, you're not going to get very far. Just last week, I was at a Landscape Ontario Growers Group provincial conference. I'm a member of that board, and we actually had a presentation from another nursery grower in the Hamilton area who spoke about how his groundwater didn't have the nutrition requirements that his plants needed, and it increased reliance on chemical supplements. That's actually us too. When we did try to pump out of the well with a secondary pump, as well as our pond that's intended for irrigation, we still didn't actually have the minerals that the plants needed. With that in mind, we are also in the orchard business, and again, same thing. On a dry year, we have to truck in water, we have to irrigate. Could we apply for a permit to pump from the creek with the GRCA? Perhaps, but at the capacity that we have right now, that's not within our scope. And speaking to the landowner and the applicant, we've talked about a number of other clients, and a good number of them are our neighbors and folks that we know. They're having their sprayers filled on site with the truck. Their animals need the water to live. And just as we've been using the competition, admittedly, but the truck backs up and fills the tank right at our greenhouse in addition to the house. I hear the concerns about traffic, but what I also hear that Councillor Chambers has brought up is about the proximity to the clients. The thing about water trucks is they're incredibly expensive. We used to have one. It costs a lot to run it per hour, which means that you have to have your depot, your clients, and your source for water within close proximity. If you take it too far, the cost goes up, you priced yourself out of the market, or you've increased the cost of your service and perhaps passed that burden along then to your clients. I do have concerns about the process that led us here, but I think those are better handled in another venue. And ultimately, although tangential to this, I want to acknowledge that many residents in the countryside don't have reliable access to water on their property, but residents in urban areas do. They turn on the tap, it comes from the city. Yes, it has a bill associated with it. But I think in this case, we need to be mindful that this impacts residents who are farming, but also others in the countryside as well. And I could have, in an additional comment, I just wrote out with regards to the secondary use in the farm parcel. You know, it's my understanding from looking at it that it's perhaps cash crop, and that doesn't necessarily regularly require water to be trucked in. But if I were to rent the land for nursery stock and put trees in, I would have to bring water. So I think that while today it might not, the residual farm parcel may not need that, it's certainly a possibility in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chambers.
And I understand exactly what the councillor is saying, that I understand that farms need water. I'm lucky in my area because you put a pipe 12 feet in the ground and you can't pump it dry, but If you have a greenhouse of water and you don't have water, then you need water trucked in. That having been said, this application fails on all three provincial policies, including our official plan, which is based on provincial policy. And the first line in every provincial policy says that municipalities must be consistent with provincial policy. And that's what our official plan is based on. The 2016 policy is very specific. It has to be a primarily an agricultural use. In this case, it is an agricultural use, but primarily it may not be, and I think that may be open to interpretation. But if you're filling cisterns and swimming pools in Haldeman County and Norfolk County, etc., that is not serving the agricultural community in proximity to the proposed use. So it fails on both of those counts with provincial policy 2016. We also need to remember that provincial policy is to protect prime agricultural areas, and uses that are not in keeping with prime agricultural areas should not be located in prime agricultural areas. In this case, it is a prime agricultural area, and we need to protect prime agricultural areas, so this fails on that provincial policy as well. The exception to that is if it does meet the prime agricultural permitted uses in prime agricultural areas per se 2016 provincial policy statement. It also is not in keeping with our own official plan, which is based on the provincial policy. So taking all that into consideration, I recognize that farms need water and people supply farms with water, but in this case, the use is not in keeping with our own policies and provincial policies. Farmers use lumber at Home Depot. It's they buy hardware at Home Depot, and they buy all kinds of stuff that supports their farms at Home Depot. But you can't locate a Home Depot in a prime agricultural area because it's not the primary use and it's not in keeping with the provincial policies. So with that, I fully support the staff recommendation, and I'm hoping that the rest of the council will recognize that we must be consistent with provincial policy. We can be sympathetic to the applicant, and I understand that. There's cost factors in business plans and all that kind of stuff, but as municipal planning people, we have to be consistent with the provincial policy.
Any other comments or concerns? Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm always leery of voting against any staff recommendation, whether it's planning or any other committee. I would be double leery voting against anything from the planner that presented this report, because based on the report and on her answers to the questions, you can see that she's done her research and her homework. So I will support the recommendation.
Any other comments or concerns? Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. I can certainly appreciate Councillor Chambers' comments, but I also am very appreciative of Councillor Garneau's comments as well. And I think putting my other hat on, I spend an awful lot of time working with an organization called Agscape, which is the agriculture in the classroom. And I'll get to where I'm going with this. But one of the things that we do in that organization is spend an awful lot of time and resources trying to convince kids to look at jobs in the ag industry. Not just to be a farmer, and not just those directly associated with the farming operations, but those that also support the agricultural community as a whole. This particular business is an example of what I would call an agricultural supportive business. And to Councillor Garneau's point, it doesn't make sense to locate it far away from where those people are going to be. So yes, maybe they have other clients that they serve, but to Councillor Coleman's point, the feed stores all sell things that are not for farms. You can go and you can get your gardening supplies there for your house in town. You can get your bird seed, you can get toys, you can get all kinds of things. And same with all of the tractor dealerships and things like that. So I think it's to the point about consistency. If we're going to allow those businesses because they are presented as a farm supply store or a tractor dealership, but discount this one because they're called the waterman and they're providing water and they may also fill the odd pool or cistern. I think we need to be mindful that we need to be supportive of the businesses that are also supporting not just our farms directly, but those that are also supporting and employed at our farms and things like that. Because if we don't have places that can deliver water to places that don't have water, like to Councillor Coleman's point, he has a son who works on the farm with him whose home doesn't have water. They have to have water trucked in. If they can't get water there, they're going to have to move and live somewhere else. So there's a piece too that keeps other people and other businesses in the community that also support the farming community. So I would support Councillor Garneau's stance as well tonight.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the analysis that Councillor Chambers brought forward. I think it is very well argued that we should say no to this application. Equally, we all recognise the need for water in our community. Is there a middle ground where we can say no to this and have our economic development team work with the proponent to find an alternative location to locate this business? Nobody's doubting the value of the business. It's just where it's located. It just doesn't fit, doesn't meet our provincial policies. So I will offer that as an olive branch, perhaps, in my mind. I will support the staff recommendation, but would like to see us go a little bit further to help the applicant.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Any other comments before we call the vote? I've seen this council turn down a man who wanted to bring in loads of dirt for his garden, and because we didn't know where the dirt came from, we said no to him and made him send all his dirt back because we didn't know what the dirt consisted of. And I feel the same way about water. And I would suggest that people near Walkerton and Clifford and Mildmay got very nervous when Walkerton happened too, because they wondered what was in their water too. They were so close, yet they were far enough away that it didn't affect them. But I feel the same way about the dirt. I mean, I don't know what's in the water from a different municipality. I have high hopes and great things to say about our water department, and I feel very secure in saying that I know they do a good job. But this is coming from a different municipality, a bigger municipality that have had issues before with water. Not saying that they have now, but there has been different problems that have cropped up in Hamilton and Ancaster with water supplies. So with the soil as my comparison, and sitting in a room full of farmers at the Agricultural Advisory Committee when it was a definite no not to support this or to refuse this, I can't have a room full of farmers tell me that they don't want it and then vote for it. So I'm going to support the refusal also, and I'm going to call the vote now. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'm going to support the recommendation, but under protest, because I don't like the way it's been handled. That's what bothers me the most. This come forward in 2021. Now it's 2024. There has been some policy changes and whatever. And whatever you want to believe, you can wordsmith anything you want. But I'm disappointed in how much the applicants had to spend and how long this has taken and whatever else. But I have never been a big favor of this application. When the first time I heard it back, I think it was in November or whenever of last year that it was coming forward. So I will support the staff, but I am not happy with the way it has been handled.
Thanks, Councillor Coleman. And he was also at the meeting with the Agriculture Advisory Committee, so he understands how they were feeling too. So we're gonna call the vote now. So the vote is to support the staff recommendation to refuse. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Thank you. Noting that I think the county has caused the applicant to spend money, and it's very unfair that it took that long, and maybe with some encouragement from other staff that maybe aren't here right now, I believe that they spent money that they didn't have to spend, and for that I'm sorry, but I wasn't in this chair then, so I'm only apologizing for someone else, and I just feel badly about that because I do believe that you were trying to do what you needed to do to get it done, and for that I'm very sorry. Which takes us to number 9.3. It's just a housekeeping site plan control bylaw, which is 14023. Who's going to speak to that? Brandon?
Through the mayor, thank you. So this is just a housekeeping amendment to the recently passed site plan control bylaw. We noticed an error in some of the wording, so it's outlined in the report. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Are there any questions for Brandon regarding either of any of the housekeeping? Seeing none, thank you, Brandon. Actually, I got to move to accept Councillor Pierce and Councillor McAlpine. All those in favor? Thank you. Takes us to number 10 on our agenda, which is communications, and we don't have any. Resolutions, and we don't have any. Other business. Councillor Howes, you have something to say?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and this is on a lighter note compared to all of our other discussions, but I wanted to remind members of council that this Saturday, the Branch 29 Legion in Paris is having a chili cook-off, and while Lucas and I have the winning recipe right here, we will look forward to seeing the mayor's team and the other Paris councilors' team and anyone else who wants to come out for a good social time and support for our local Legion. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it, Councillor House, like you have no idea. Which takes us to number 13 on our agenda, which is in camera. We have nothing to go in camera about, which takes us to number 14, which is our bylaws, and Councillor Kyle is going to take us through our bylaws, noting that there's 2 added in the addendum. Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McAlpine that bylaws 6-24 to 9-24 be read a first time.
All those in favor of the first reading of the bylaws? Second reading, please, Councillor Kyle.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McAlpine that bylaws 6-24 to 9-24 be read a second time and all clauses and preambles be adopted.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the second reading of the bylaws? Seeing none, all those in favor of the second reading? And I ask Councillor Kyle to please do the bylaws for the third time.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McAlpine that bylaws 6-24 to 9-24 be read a third time, passed, signed, and executed.
Thank you. All those in favor of the third reading? Thank you. None opposed. Is there anything else for the betterment of the County of Brant? Seeing none, call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Pierce, we stand